Apparently the nerds are ready. Let's do it, Rotti. I'm so excited.
Yeah, man. Partin messaged me. He was like, "Hey, what are the rules?" I was like, "There's no rules, bro." At least I don't think there is. So, keeping it simple.
Ooh.
We actually have some fun matchups.
Yep. All right. So who is who actually? Parting is Wasp, right? Parting is top right, and Trigger is bottom left.
Yes. The Trigger's bottom left. They both actually have Wasps on their roster, but Trigger's going to go Gunbot Wasp, which is what he's been playing a lot of. Partin's going to play with recalls, but only recall. Like, that's the only recall unit in his army, so that's kind of funky. But it's not like going to be all the rest of the recalls being brought in with it. So, kind of a unique comp from Parting.
And both running Crusader. Shocker. I've obviously heard a lot about it. Shockers look very good. I mean, especially once Shockers are out, I think Wasp are completely useless. Maybe the recall guys, they can stay safe. Man, this is also hard. I've never observed either. This is crazy, man.
Yeah, I need to change my mouse settings. It's different from the last time I tried to watch something on this, but yeah, no, it's but the crazy thing is, it's just so fast, right? Like, already we've got units kind of coming across. We're gonna have tech choices made in a moment as well. I mean, Partin's already thrown down his third base, so he is setting himself up to just macro this up.
Yep, a Trigger has enough resources technically to do it, but I guess he just wants to have a few more gunbots because he doesn't want to go up to 3 bases too early and potentially lose workers immediately in the natural and lose all momentum. He's got the money for it. I think he's about to drop a third base. Wow, that's so many. Okay, he's going to go Gunbot Wasp. Wow, that's wild.
Wow, yeah, he's just going to spam units. Maybe wants to try and jump on this fight now while Partin is maybe under kind of represented on the map, and he does force the recall back. And I guess that's still only kind of your basic resource being used. He's got so much power banked up, 1,000 power banked. So he's just waiting, no tech on the way or anything, just spamming basic units still. So he's absolutely looking to win a fight right here and now. And he's going to have the gunbots try and, overcharge to do something in the background of this with the Wasps coming in to tank.
Looks pretty decent for Trigger at the moment. And the recall guys are going to be forced to recall back. Parting is going to send as many Wasps to the center to reinforce. But still a lot of gunbots left over here, Rotti.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of them, and those things, they pack a punch. As long as they're not taking damage, which is obviously what the Wasps are here to kind of help against, then I think they're going to be good to kill so much. The recalls pack a punch themselves, but as they do get a few more Wasps in front, Trigger is starting to run out of momentum, and that's going to be the issue here. Yeah. As Parting obviously can just get his own Wasps back into the fight very quickly, and as the gunbot count goes down, this is way less scary.
Yep, it looked promising for a split second, but in the end, Parting was able to reinforce that 3-base economy really kicking in. And obviously, if we're fighting here, I think Parting has pretty much already done it. Trigger is going to try to tech. He's going to try to tech to air, where he's got Falcons and airships, but that's going to take forever. And honestly, he's going to have a very hard time even just defending his main and natural. That was close, looked promising, but in the end, Parting holds. And with that hold, I feel like we're looking at a 1-0 lead already.
I think so. Parting starts to go into the air tech. Actually, so does Trigger as well. So he's going to try and tech out behind this, but obviously down at base. And Parting maybe doesn't even need to be here right now with the base lead. Kind of taking this fight, but he might just have enough anyways. A few recalls in the back and putting in work. His Wasp number is very good in the front lines as well. And he's going to start killing some workers on the natural as well. So he is looking good. And Parting does indeed grab himself a 1-0 lead.
Yep. I actually had the wrong overlay. I forgot to hide my stuff. But we'll hide that right now to make sure that we can just enjoy the game. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, it looked promising. I mean, obviously, a lot of these fights, this is the cool thing about getting into a new RTS, where it's like, okay, I've played it for like 40 hours now, and you found some of the stuff that you like yourself, but if you're then watching, you're like, yes, no, yes, no, and it actually looked pretty cool what Trigger was doing there, just full sending it on 2 bases, no tech, first gunbots to stabilize, and then a lot of Wasp to reinforce very, very quickly. I kind of thought he had it, but yeah, obviously defender's advantage, especially once the third base kicked in for Parting. It was big.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Third base, and just there's such like, I guess, like really fine lines of like timings in this game, right? Like it's so clutch, like what works and what doesn't work. And Trigger just had to kind of burst through a little bit more powerfully then and get something done on that third base to really have a chance, I think.
So Parting takes the 1-0 lead in our first of 8 best of 7s, as we're going to hop into our second match immediately. And of course, we'll take a look at the decks in the beginning once more. Trigger is our green player in the bottom left. He's actually moved his units around, but it's still Gunbot Wasp. Parting is still playing Rico West. Seems like they haven't changed anything, right? So Trigger just says, alright, I lost, but I lost because of the way that I tried to play. He splits up a couple of Wasps very quickly. He is playing very different here, because last game it was pure Gunbot in the beginning. Now it's a couple of Wasps into Gunbots.
Yeah, just kind of doing different things with your basic units. It's something that's really become more meta, kind of as people have figured out. Like, when we first started playing, it was always like, you have Blink and your anti-air Blink, or like, you know, Gunbot and the anti-air Gunbot guy, right? Whereas now there's like a lot of just kind of basic ground units, and using them in different ways creates some different fights early. Obviously, I imagine we won't see any major changes to composition until they see a game where some of those tech units actually get to come into use. So far, that's not going to be a factor. After that first game was very aggressive from Trigger. This time, we'll see if he wants to tech up or what he wants to do once again, parting instantly into that third base.
I keep pressing Z, by the way, to zoom out.
Zoom out.
Yeah, I hope we get that one day. Seems like Trigger just kind of wants to go for more of the same. Again, it is Parting going up to 3 bases. Trigger staying on 2, and he really believes in this Gunbot Wasp composition. He's splitting off a couple of Wasps to go into the natural, but they don't kill workers that quickly. I don't know if this is going to work for Trigger.
Yeah, the Gunbots have to absolutely just kite here. They are staying out of reach of the recalls for the most part, so it's only the Wasps that are coming towards him. Now he's going to get on top of the recalls, so he gets a couple kills. The Wasps have killed off, what, a quarter of the natural so far, so that's not too bad. These Gunbots just need to hold out, man, and he is getting rid of the Wasps, and now he's getting on top of the recallers. He's going to get a couple more kills in the third base this time. It's closer to being in trouble, I feel like, but I feel like it's still just going to be at some point Parting and able to rally enough over.
Whenever it's close, I feel like that's not quite good enough. There is still a lot of Gunbots though, right? It's 48 supply at the moment for Trigger. He's got a lot of Wasp going in to reinforce as well. He has killed a lot of these expensive recalls. So it looks promising, but obviously Trigger needs to do more than kill a couple of workers here or trade out some units. He is a 2-base player against 3-base Parting. He's getting in real deep right now. How big is that recall? It's not very big at all. Is Trigger doing it this time around, Rotti?
I think so. Parting only has 12 supply, and the little, I think, unit alteration, right? Like, he just went less Wasps, more Gunbots initially, and it worked. Like, he didn't need that many Wasps in front because the Gunbots just kited, and they just never let anything happen anyway. And so there you have it.
Tiny
Just
bit
like
of
that.
overconfidence maybe by Parting to fight so far away, right, from the third, because he was fighting quite far on the bottom side of the third base, and the recall guys are so slow, so even if you recall them to the center, it still takes them a couple of seconds to participate in the fight, while it felt that all of Trigger's units were participating in the fight all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. As we get invited to game number 3, man, we can really just go through games quickly if we have someone hosting, don't we?
Yeah, it's awesome. We've got India as well, guys, providing A, Polish coverage, and B, he's gonna take care of all the hosting. This is the only series that will play on Asia, I assume. I think everything else will be on Europe. Maybe once or twice we'll do some server swapping. For instance, when it's Cuckoo against J Money. Is that the second match, by the way?
Yeah, I think so.
I'm actually very excited for that one too, because I love it. I'll tell you all about it soon. All right, guys, round 3. We're all tied up, 1 apiece between Trigger and Parting, 2 of the absolute highest ranked players in Battle Aces. Still same decks. Nothing has really changed yet.
No, like I say, I feel like as long as it stays early game, these guys still have no reason to change the decks, right? And maybe you could make like a slight alteration based on if you see something in the deck of your opponent that you don't have an answer to, but so far it's all been about early game. Trigger refusing to attack, just being super aggressive and getting this series tied up 1-1 because of it.
Yep. Trigger has not built a single unit yet. That's not the basic resource.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, he hasn't even spent any power in this entire series in 2 games. As this time we're going to see Parting a little bit more aggressively forward with the Wasps right away. And you already see just an overcharge being used on the Gunbots. You like them Gunbots, Rotti. You're one of the big Gunbot believers, aren't you?
Well, I just find it super hard because the game is so quick to really get comfortable with a lot of different openings. So I just kind of try to at least kind of get somewhat good with one, and then I kind of know the interactions, the dynamics, which fights you cannot take. And then once I'm tired of it, I'm obviously going to try. I definitely think the Blinky guys are the next ones I'm really going to try to get familiar with and get good with. But the older you get, Rotti, the more difficult it is to learn all these different styles.
Just gotta stick to one thing at a time, man. Figure them out.
Ooh, bleeding out a couple Wasps. It ain't much, but at this level, all these units could matter.
Yeah, Parting is just gonna, again, just try and keep around with these Wasps, try and slow Trigger from coming across the map, and just try and force him to kind of move around the bottom. Do not want to lose too many of those you mentioned. Those Gunbots will shred the Wasps if given the chance. I think what's good for Parting here is that Trigger's going to end up hitting a little bit later to that last game again, right? So he's just going to have himself a bunch of recalls ready. And those recalls are really the damage dealers in this scenario in my eyes. So I think that's going to be the big important part of this, as the Wasps are going to start engaging in. He's going to get surrounded this time, so the Gunbots can't escape as easily, and that means the recalls actually get to fire so much more than they did previously. It's just so many Gunbots. Is it enough to power through? As Parting is very confident, it seems, in kind of chasing this down.
Should probably go back right now, right? I feel like there's no need for Parting to fight here. If it's 3 bases against 2, he might be happy with the trades he's been getting so far. Was a good start to the battle, but I don't think there's any need for Parting to stay this far away from the third. The quicker he is to his reinforcements, the better it will be for him. But felt like the start of that was good. It is still a crazy amount of gunbots though, but the recall count is going up as well.
Yes, it is, as we are going to be seeing the Wasp trying to get in the front again. As long as the recalls kind of stay in good numbers, I think they can do very well. They pack such a punch with every single shot they fire, and they really just delete units. There just needs to be enough of them to survive. They are pretty fragile, so the Wasp giving themselves up to let those recalls do the damage. And it looks as though the gunbots are going to be forced back, as Parting now does have to recall himself, but that's the power. You can kind of chase and recall back to safety. Parting has netted himself about a 12 to 15 supply lead here, so it is looking good for Parting at the moment.
Yep, every single second that goes by, obviously Parting is loving life because he knows that third base is at this point paying off. And Trigger is kind of similar to that first game. He's just not battling where you ever want to be battling here. He wants to be on top of the third. He wants to, at the bare minimum, be killing those workers, right? So it's actually 2 base against 2 base. It is not. We've had 2 players that just seem to both believe that what they are doing is the counter to what the other guy is doing. And that's why we're watching 3 games that are completely identical. Trigger believes this is the way to beat the 3 base setup of Parting. Parting believes that he can hold. And now we've watched 3 similar games, one of them having a different outcome, but it does seem like Parting is going to take the 2-1 lead here. They're both tacking up. Trigger is actually going to go Crusader Shocker. Parting is going to play air, and Trigger's got no anti-air at all whatsoever. 0.
Yeah, obviously that always feels as though you just get enough air units out and everything is going to die no matter what. And it's going to take forever and a day for Trigger to get any sort of anti-air available. You'd have to tech straight through that Starforge. Parting chasing again, giving up a lot of Wasps in these moments as the recalls try and push on forwards. A few more of those gunbots still being shot on down. The Wasp still bleeding through and trying to get on top of these gunbots as well. Once again, Parting just says, that's far enough for me. I'm just going to recall back. We are, what, like 30-ish seconds away from seeing the tech hit the field. And yeah, honestly, the air units just feel uncounterable. There should be no answer.
Yep. You don't even have to go airship here. You can just spam dragonflies, right? That's awesome as well. You don't have to worry about them ever getting picked off. There's absolutely nothing for Trigger. Trigger has to start his anti-air tech immediately. So at one given point, perhaps he can get some airships out. But that's just never going to be in time. He's going to lose all of his workers probably to all of these dragonflies that are currently being produced. I think Trigger is dead. He knows he's dead. He's still going to try to make something out of it. But Parting's got this game in the back.
Yep. Dragonfly is just going to come across. There's absolutely zero answer. You can kill workers. You can just go straight after the army. Pick and choose Parting. Whatever you do, there's not really a wrong decision right now as you start blowing stuff up. And yeah, Trigger's on his way to his own air tech now. But by the time that happens, I love this. Parting just straight up clicks the base. He knows he's got time. No point killing the workers if he can get the base instead. So he's going to kill the natural. And again, just not really any answer available for Trigger right now. He's just going to dive on forwards and pretty much just put an end to this one. The Dragonfly sit overhead. And this army will start to die. We're a few seconds away from air tech and Trigger, but it just ain't gonna happen.
Nope. Even if he gets a bunch of airships out and somehow eventually takes care of all these dragonflies, which I highly doubt, he is still a mega dead. Okay, that's a lot of airships because he didn't really spend any power yet, like you mentioned. So he's got anti-air for days, but obviously Parting is rich. He can build his own airships. Parting can really do whatever the hell he wants, and he's gonna be okay here.
Yeah, he has just been building his own airships at home. Eventually, he will just have more of them. He's had more economy all game long. And there's nothing stopping him from just continuing to build more and more as well at the end of the day, right? So Trigger stuck on one base, trying to make something of this, but not really going to get there. As the airships come across the map to have one final stand.
I am ready for the ultimate airship battle, man. I've seen airships battle each other, but really not this many.
I don't think I've seen any this many, but it's going to be destruction because they're pretty good anti-air units, and that is GG's as Parting. We'll get back in the lead of the series.
Yep, Parting 2, Trigger 1 with 3 times a very similar game because Trigger just believes in his opening that he can punish the 3-base opening of Parting. Parting believes that he can hold. Now, Trigger could probably look at this previous game and say, the only reason I lost that is because I let him get that surround, right? Like the tiny surround where he lost a bunch of gunbots to the Wasp and the recall guys that were actually able to get in range and get on top of his gunbots. So do you stay with it, or do you now finally switch it up and say like, maybe this isn't the way to go?
I feel like now you've got to go switch it up, right? Like, it feels kind of crazy to do the same thing yet again, especially when you've now not had it work twice. I kind of like that he was able to adjust and kind of make it work in game 2, right? But if you're not able to kind of make it work on game, in game 3, I don't know. I think it's time to maybe tech up or to, expand yourself, go up to 3 bases on the 3 bases and see what you can do from there instead.
It's hard because that first game was close. The second game he gets the job done, and then the third game yes, you can say maybe this doesn't work, but maybe it's just that surround. Maybe I need to be slightly more on top of where he's moving his wasp, and if I can just prevent that little surround from happening, then it would all be okay. 2-1 for Parting, guys, as we load into game 4.
I'm glad you said let's do best of 7s, Rotti, because these games really speed along, don't they?
Yeah, especially I think at this level, because these guys obviously they've played crazy much. They know exactly what they need to do to win. They are no strangers to their win condition. We're gonna have a lot of short games here, but I feel like even in the short games, a lot of stuff happens.
Yeah. It's kind of cool. You said we've had 3 identical games, but obviously little moves made big differences, showcasing the importance of the micro in these fights and everything. As Trigger just overcharges and starts to move forward with some gunbots. And Parting, about to get that money to build a third if he wants it. We'll see if he's going to take it. Yes, he does. Instant third base from Parting yet again. He still just believes he's good enough to defend it if Trigger gets aggressive.
I mean, you can't really knock Parting for it, right? Because Parting will... if we think back of that second game as well, there were a couple of moments where he bled out a few wasp. It wasn't a big deal, but it's like, you lose 2-3 here, you lose 4 over there, and that can really make the difference in these close scenarios where your opponent full sends it off 2 bases, and you're trying to defend on 3 bases. I mean, that man has taken the 2-1 lead, so... Can't fault him for it. I hope for Trigger that he knows what he's doing. Interesting move, by the way. I always think it's so risky to move your gunbots through that little alley up, because it kind of exposes your gunbots in the bottom. Okay, the units show up in time. Well done by Trigger. Actually, a pretty decent trade overall. Didn't lose a lot. Got a couple wasps.
Yeah, we see more wasps being made from partners. We see round 4 of gunbot wasp versus, well, wasp recall. And Trigger is going to set up. We do have the wasps on the bottom side, looking for that potential surround as well, as we talked about in that last game. This time Trigger's a little bit more on top of it. He pushes those wasps back very quickly, and the gunbot count is huge this time. I'm not sure this surround's ever going to be enough. There's not enough wasps to wrap around at all. The recalls will struggle to get into reach and to obviously get their shots off, which is the power of the gunbots being able to stay away from taking damage. That's where they can find a lot of value, and they are going to get a recall before the recall goes off.
Been overclocking a lot, though, so I kind of think at this point the gunbot's going to have to chill a little bit, because if you can't stim them anymore, as we like to say in StarCraft 2, you can see that these front guys, they've been here for a little while, so they can't really get their max movement speed and the attack buff, but... Alright, still takes a pretty decent fight. Supplies are very close. Parting obviously can just trade out a little bit and then recall back immediately. Cannot lose too many of the recall guys, though, and he's losing a decent amount there. Is this Trigger tying things up?
It does look like it, man. His Trigger, just pure gunbots, is apparently able to overwhelm this army of Parting. And man, this series has such a deja vu to it, because this is what happened in game 2. It felt like after Parting held off in game 1, Trigger came back in game 2, was just like, no, look, I'll just do this and you'll die. Which then has to make Parting wonder if he can really do the same thing himself going into game 5.
I think this is a bit silly, by the way, by Trigger. He didn't have to do this, right? Because he's going up to 3 bases. He's already killed it. He might still win this fight, and if he wins this fight convincingly, he's going to be happy. There's a tiny gap for these gunbots to still micro their way to the bottom right. And yeah, this trade is okay. I thought it was a little bit unnecessary, because he already took a great fight. He was going up to 3 bases. But even like that, it is good enough. We're all tied up, guys. 2 for Trigger, 2 for Parting. Alright, so what are we going to do in game 5? Do we stay with it? Will Parting now say, okay, I messed up. I bled out a few too many wasps. There was no need to try to pick up those reinforcements. And I just need a better surround. I feel like these boys are stubborn, and they will just keep going with what they believe is right. I feel like I am listening to an argument of 2 pro gamers that are both incredibly good at the game, but they just see the game different. I know that's something that you're very familiar with as well. And we are just witnessing this unfold in a best of 7.
Yeah, man, like they just absolutely utterly refuse to go and do anything different. Parting's like, I should always be able to hold this third base, and Trigger's like, I should always be able to deny it.
Yeah, no.
Who's gonna break first?
I mean, we have experienced this the last 14 years in StarCraft, right? You can have 2 of the best Zergs or 2 of the best Protoss players in the world, and they will talk about a certain opening and response, and they'll just have completely different opinions on how you should deal with it. And that's probably what's happening here. Both of these guys are incredibly good in battle aces. And Parting just feels, I can hold, and Trigger says, you cannot hold. So we are witnessing a debate settle in front of our eyes. I love it.
The meta forms. After this, we will know exactly what to and not to do against a third base, Rotti.
Yeah. Who is right? Is it Trigger or is it Parting? As I have the feeling we're going to see something that is... Oh, we switched it up. That is no longer recall. That is Blinky Boy for Parting.
Oh, it's okay. So I wonder if Parting Well, I'm very interested as to how he uses the blinks, and if the blinks can also get overwhelmed by gunbots if you're not careful. Obviously, they have a little bit more micro potential perhaps early in some of these trades. You got to be super careful. So we'll see what happens. Already spreading the blinks out, so he has information on any potential units moving across the map. Sees the 2 wasps on the top side, for example. That's one thing Parting's very good at. Like, he spreads his units absolutely everywhere to make sure he just has full map control ASAP. But then you've got to be careful if the wasps come through, and obviously because it's blinked now, we're going to see more wasp-based play on the side of Trigger as he wants to get those surrounds, he wants to get this value, and he is going to start surrounding on the first couple of these blinks. They do have a blink back. Wasps coming in now from Parting as he needs these to get through to tank, and he needs to keep those blinks just safe and, well, attacking in the background, because that's where the DPS is going to come from.
Interesting bet. I haven't really seen these 2 units clash with this combo of both spamming tier 1 in a little while. I feel like gunbots can be very good against Blink, but obviously Blink is incredibly good in punishing gunbots as well, where normally you feel so safe at gunbots that you can always run away as long as you don't get surrounded. Blinks can really punish your gunbots if you just overextend a tiny bit too much.
This is now a 3rd base from both. So this time Trigger just says, okay, this is a composition I can't just straight up kill. So instead, I'm going to go and take my 3rd base. I'm going to be playing Wasp heavy against the Blinks anyways. That gives me the ability on the map to take a 3rd base. As Parting is a little bit far forward, so you're trying to pull those Blinks back and keep them in the background. Very Wasp heavy still from Trigger. Only has a couple gunbots. They will add a bit of DPS to this, but it's mostly going to be those Wasps. Parting is so good at blinking those Blinks just somewhere that they can't really easily be reached by the Wasp at the very least, and just keeping a few of them in the back to keep on damaging away while the Wasps do most of the work.
Yeah, I like this fight a lot for Parting overall. Obviously, Parting doesn't have to stick around too long if he feels like it is not needed. He's really nothing but Wasp at the other side of the map. Really has been a game of chicken, you know. I feel like I tech all the time, Parting, and people tech so quick against me. You look at Parting and Trigger, and they just kind of refuse to tech, as it seems like that's such a big investment. And perhaps they feel like they lose the momentum, they lose the tempo. Overall, I like these trades slightly better on the side of Parting, but nowhere near enough to say that, okay, I think he's about to kill the 3rd base of Trigger and win this game.
Yeah, I don't think you push through onto the 3rd, which is then the question of who decides to tech up first. I would not be surprised to see tech starting up soon. Like, if you Trigger maybe a bit later because you're kind of afraid of this attack coming in, he's set up to potentially surround. And that's what Parting pulled back to deal with, and he's going to build more units to go deal with the run by on the natural, yeah.
Parting obviously incredibly quick in every single game he plays. He saw that, he decided to send a couple of his own Wasp, and he now takes an even better fight in the center of the map. We have a few gunbots showing up, but it kind of feels that the Blink guys have had a much bigger impact on these battles than the gunbots so far. I mean, if you have 1 Blink for every single gunbot that's participating in the fight, it seems like another amazing fight here for Parting.
It really is. I mean, at this point, we're getting to too many Blinks, right, where every time they're fighting, they're doing a lot. I'm not sure if that forward Blink was quite it, though. That puts them in a bit of danger, which this didn't need to be, so maybe we lose some of those numbers. But I think overall, suddenly it is Parting that is overwhelming. The supply of Trigger is absolutely plummeting. Trigger tried to get something done towards the 3rd, but Parting is going to hold. And again, just makes it happen. A little switch of units here and says, okay, I'm kind of sick of playing this. Let's do something different. And it absolutely goes kind of Parting's way.
So Parting may have lost the argument, but he won game 5. So he waved the white flag. He said, all right, I believe that your 2 base aggression can kill my 3 base setup, but I can switch it up. I think gunbots can be sick, but obviously we had Trigger investing in a couple of Wasps very early on, where he tried to get that surround, and he sort of got a surround, but it wasn't quite enough to really trap the Blinky boys in place and actually finish them off. So then he was just kind of bleeding out a bunch of Wasp, and it just felt that Parting's army was going to scale a bit better. I think it was too difficult for Trigger to then go into gunbot, because then he wouldn't be able to split them up properly, and then the Wasp of Parting would be a big issue. So I think it's maybe their first chase on the Blink guys that just didn't pay off and made him lose some momentum. And because of that, the gunbots were never really in those numbers we saw them in game 2 and 4.
Yeah. The Blinks are so fragile, man. Like, if you mess up your Blink, you get them surrounded, they just die. They don't have the DPS to, like, stand down and surround and, like, fight out of it. So you got to be so careful with them. But when they do live and you get to bigger numbers, like, the damage they put out is kind of crazy. Like, each shot doesn't feel like a lot when there's, like, 4 or 5 of them. But when there's, like, 20 Blinks and they start all firing away, no, we never got to 20 in this game. But, like, their DPS ramps up big time, so...
And they're kind of tanky, right? Especially against Wasp that are attacking them. Like, it's not like, oh, no, they're being attacked. You have to move them back immediately. No, they can kind of hold the front line there for a couple of seconds.
Yeah.
Means it is
not like a pulse around that sign, right?
Absolutely. Means it is match point for Parting. We've got 8 best of 7s, guys, that we are watching tonight. Players from 3 different regions competing here in this fun night of show matches. Parting and Trigger is the very first. It is match point for our Korean player. He's taking the 3-2 lead. Did we switch it up on Trigger's side this time around? I don't think he's going to switch up his deck. I think he's just aiming to play a slightly cleaner game. Let's take a look.
No changes. Going to see a repeat of Game 5 then between these two. So we will see our first couple of wasps popping out from Parting. So this is going to be Parting this time. He's going to go wasps immediately instead of blinks. So that's a bit different, right? Because last time he opened the blinks, put them everywhere. This time it's going to be wasps all over the place, and that could catch Trigger off guard if Trigger is not careful. Again, just versatility on these openers, even though you've got the same set of units.
Yep, Trigger would ideally eventually switch into gunbots. He's probably afraid if he does it too early that he is going to lose out a couple of them. The spotting is just a menace to play against. He's everywhere, and if there are 2 or 3 units exposed, he's going to surround them immediately. You can already see that very careful transition into gunbots. We don't want to play Wasp against Wasp forever. Does Spotting have any blink guys yet? He's making the first ones, I guess, right? Yeah.
Yeah, just bringing those up, and we'll start to bring those forwards. They'll start taking some trades with those wasps in the front line. With the third base is on the way from both players. This is it, Rotti. This is our final chance to perhaps see some tech in this series instead of just pure tier 1 units.
We saw some dragonflies, and don't worry, I think a lot of them,
we did.
and a lot of the guys tonight, they're gonna play so different than these two guys are playing. So I'm not worried about it at all. 4 Wasp are gonna get on top of a couple of the workers in the natural. Getting 1 worker is nice. If he would have been able to get 2, that would have been quite massive this early on. Trigger needs to be careful. You gotta pay attention at all costs. You cannot bleed out too many units for nothing.
Unless you have the blinks just coming down, just chasing a little bit. I mean, this army of Trigger starts to get very scary, right? The more there is, the more those gunbots can fire. They really hit that critical mass where it's just like, how do you ever kill them before they just overwhelm you? So you got to be kind of cautious, and Parton, I'm sure, knows this as well. Knows he's got the power of the blinking back to kind of get him towards that base more easily. And we are going to see Parton trying to tech up into air, so he's going to be at a deficit in terms of money spent on units. So this maybe Trigger's opportunity to go and get something done. Quite a lot of blinks available, but we're going to run out of wasp very quickly. I think Parton's going to have to blink up top toward his reinforcements. That's going to give Trigger a little bit of a position where it's going to be difficult for Parton to come in and get a real kind of surround and a real spread on his units. Now blinking forwards, though, and chasing for those gunbots.
Yeah, he got a bunch of workers. That's nice, but this is what I mentioned earlier. I think Blink is incredibly good in punishing gunbots that have overextended a little bit, and I would say this was a tiny bit of an overextension. Even though we got a bunch of the workers, if we lose all the gunbots here, it is not worth it. Trigger is reinforcing them with a lot of wasp. Another forward blink by Parting to get on top of the remaining gunbots that I don't think can use overclock anymore.
Yeah, if they can't overclock, then they are in so much trouble. They're just not scary anymore, man. They are just going to get absolutely cleaned up. The blinks are putting in the work here, and it looks as though Parting is going to get it done because he's got tech online. Actually, Trigger is on his way to tech as well. He's got the same tech setup with Dragonfly airship, but Parting just has the units already made, already on top of this base. The third will fall from Trigger. And it looks as though Parting is going to pull ahead to win this series.
Yep. I thought Trigger was playing well there, and I thought it was a cute idea the way that he was playing it. I just think he got a tiny bit carried away. He went so deep with the gunbots, but every single time you steer more, use overclock, right? You're going to put yourself in danger because at one point there is no way home anymore. And I think Parting did a great job in realizing that eventually those units were committed. And yeah, who cares that he lost a bunch of workers? If he's going to clean up the entire army that was being sent towards the third, he is fine. We now see Trigger trying to send it on the third base of Parting, but Parting's got more than enough airships. It is airship versus airship, and it's Parting who wins the first best of 7 of the night.